Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to unpack one of the most misunderstood topics in psychoanalysis, our feelings. And we're going to focus on the one feeling that, according to Jacques Lacan, always tells the truth. Okay, so let's just dive right in. There's this idea that just won't die, that the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan was this, cold, brainy intellectual who was obsessed with language but couldn't care less about our actual messy emotional lives. But as the analyst Colette Soler says, that's just an absurd accusation. Lacan didn't ignore feelings, he built an absolutely revolutionary theory to explain them. But, to really get Lacan, you have to go back to where it all started, Sigmund Freud. And Freud's take on our emotions was, well, let's just say he was deeply suspicious of them. He believed that our feelings, as real and as powerful as they are, often trick us. See, for Freud, the real clues to what's going on inside us weren't found in the big emotions we feel on the surface. He kind of saw those as potential distractions, red herrings even. The real treasure was hidden in the details, the weird structure of a dream, a name you suddenly forget, a joke that reveals way more than you thought. Those were the things that needed decoding.
So how exactly do our feelings lie? Well, Freud laid out this whole mechanism he called displacement. Imagine this. You have a thought that's just unacceptable. Your mind shoves the thought itself down into your unconscious, but the emotion that was attached to it, that gets cut loose. Now you have this free-floating feeling that needs somewhere to go, so it just latches onto something totally different, something safer, something that makes more sense on the surface.
And here's the kicker. The sadness you feel watching a sad movie, that might actually be old, unresolved grief that's just found a convenient new home. That intense annoyance you have with a coworker, it could very well be anger at a family member that's been, displaced. The feeling is 100% real, but the story you're telling yourself about why you feel it, that's often just a cover-up. A lie your mind tells you to protect you from something deeper. Okay, so fast forward a few decades, Lacan comes along. He looks at this brilliant idea from Freud, and he gives it this massive update. He basically argues that this whole process isn't just some neat psychological trick, it's baked into the very structure of language itself. What Lacan did was he looked at Freud's playbook, and what he saw were the basic moves of language. He saw repression, where one idea gets pushed down and replaced by another, as a metaphor. And he saw displacement, where a feeling slides over to something that's just associated with the real cause, as metonymy. And these aren't just fancy terms for English class. They are the engine of how we speak and think every single day. For Lacan, our whole reality is woven together from these signifiers, the words, the sounds, the bits and pieces of language. They don't just describe our world, they literally create it for us. So it makes sense, right? If language structures everything we think, it must also be the very thing that produces and structures everything we feel. Our emotions are an effect of the signifier. So this leads us to a really mind-bending question. If our feelings are constantly sliding around, attaching themselves to the wrong things, are we just lost in this hall of emotional mirrors? Is there any feeling we can actually trust to tell us something real, something true about who we are? Lacan's answer is a powerful, resounding yes. There is one. And that feeling? It's anguish. Now, this is a huge claim he's making. He's saying that unlike sadness or anger or happiness or anything else, anguish is the one single affect that is not deceptive. It's the only feeling that does not lie about its cause. So what makes anguish so special? Well, for one, it doesn't get displaced. It doesn't slide around from one idea to another. It's like an anchor. While other feelings point to other words, other signifiers, anguish points to something that has no word, something real, that is totally beyond language. And this unnameable real, Lacan says, is the true, hidden cause of our desire. Lacan gave this mysterious cause an equally mysterious name, Object A. You can think of it as a piece of ourselves that we had to give up in order to enter the world of language and rules. It's the fundamental gap in our being that keeps us searching, wanting, and desiring our whole lives. So, anguish? Anguish is the alarm bell that goes off when we get a little too close to that lost, real core of who we actually are. And here's where it gets really cool. This idea isn't just some abstract theory about our own private psychology. It gives us an incredible lens for looking at history and for explaining why the whole feeling of dread and anguish seems to have changed so much over the centuries.
I mean, you can literally trace this shift. Back in the Middle Ages, anguish was often the fear of a god who spoke, a god who laid down the law. His will was known, even if it was totally terrifying. Then you get to someone like Pascal in the 17th century, and the terror becomes about God's silence. The authority is still there, but he's stopped talking. By the time you get to the 20th century with thinkers like Heidegger, that authority is just gone. Now we're left with the anguish of just existing in a silent, empty universe. So what about right now? What about our world? Lacan had a pretty radical take. He suggested that the very way our modern society is set up, what he called the capitalist discourse, it doesn't just make us anxious by accident. No. He saw it as a machine that is structurally designed to produce a very specific kind of anguish. And here's how he breaks it down. Capitalism tends to dissolve traditional social bonds. Things like community, family, faith. It increasingly tells us we are what we produce or what we buy. The main relationship it offers us isn't with other people, but with gadgets and things to consume. And the result of all this, Lacan argued, is a state he called subjective destitution, that deep, gnawing feeling that we ourselves are being treated like just another disposable object in the system. Okay, so let's pull all this together. What's the big takeaway? Far from ignoring our feelings, Lacan gave us this incredible new way to understand them. He showed us that while most of our emotions can lead us astray because they're just products of language sliding from one thing to another, anguish is different. It is our one reliable signal, our one true compass, pointing directly to the real, unspeakable core that truly drives us. And that leaves us with a pretty heavy thought to chew on. If Lacan is right, if anguish is the only feeling that doesn't lie, then maybe it's not something to just be medicated or pushed away or avoided at all costs. Maybe it's a message. And the real question then becomes, what is your anguish trying to tell you?